welcome to the channel. You've seen the thumbnail and you're probably wondering what exactly this is about. So you want to react to rock and roll music. Well, I'm going to consider rock and roll music's prime as the time that most people probably need a little information on when they start to react to music like this. Between the 50s and 90s, but particularly the 60s and 70s, which I consider the real peak of rock and roll and in particular American music, really popular American music. So yeah, let's get on with it. So who is this for? This is for reactors, obviously. That's what it was advertised for, but not just reactors. I mean, if I only had people reacting to rock and roll listen to my channel, then I would only have a couple of dozen subscribers, and I need more than that. So, you know, no matter who you are, no matter what you do, hit the like, hit the subscribe button, because, I mean, if you're a reactor, I've probably already subscribed to you. You owe me back. So like I say, this is only for reactors. This is for people who really didn't have access to a lot of the early music. And I say early music, oh my God, you know, I grew up with all of it. So for me to say that makes me feel a lot older than I should, but I am pretty old. So it's not just for reactors, like I say. If you haven't listened to rock and roll or just want to for whatever reason, then this is a channel for you. I'm going to give you basic information. I'm not going to tell you everything about the band. After all, this is not a history lesson. And I'm not an expert. I'm not a music expert. I'm not even a musician, although I took some music in school. I'm not what you would call a musician. But I lived through all of it. I've listened to most all of it. And I have opinions, and just like you would as a reactor, but what I'd like to do is make you a little bit more prepared for doing your reactions, or if you're just a listener and wanting to explore, to give you some kind of a guidepost on where to look for the music and which recordings are really the best to learn about. So this isn't really about dissing modern music or rap or anything else that's out there right now. Yeah, I may not like it, I may not be a fan, but that doesn't mean I'm going to rip on it all the time. Maybe a little bit, but not all the time. This is because, you know, out of all the reactions I've watched, all the reactors I've watched, at some point, usually within the first 5 or 6 videos that they do, there's a comment like, oh wow, that was so much better than today's music. I wish I was back alive back in the 70s so I could have heard this or seen these bands live. And that's like I said, it's a real common sentiment. I don't know of any reactors I've watched that do not say things like that. So I mean, you know, as much music as there is out there today, it's just really uninspired and not a lot of soul to it. And that's kind of the basic or basis of a lot of rock and roll was soul. I mean, rock and roll wasn't just something that appeared out of nowhere in the 50s. It came from country music. It came from spirituals, you know, gospel music. It came from the blues, and I'd say maybe more from the blues than anything else. So there's a lot of input into what rock and roll became, and you know, I think it's important to share that information with you. As somebody who's ancient and decrepit like me, you know, I've got a lot of information. I've got a lot of feelings about it. And, you know, frankly, I'd hate to die thinking that all the younger generation were just completely clueless about all this. So what is it really about modern music that's uninspiring? Well, it's what I like to call the Disney effect. I mean, how many of your popular artists right now came from the Disney Channel? I mean, it's so milquetoast. Ooh, look that word up. You'll love it. It's very bland and kind of, it's so geared towards being popular that it's not, that they forgot to make it good. Like I said, it lacks soul, it lacks heart. And Heart, a good band to listen to, by the way. Another reason to watch this channel and learn a little bit about rock and roll is, well, first of all, history has to not scare you. History is not scary. We had a lot of things going on in the past that are very valuable today. You know, pretty much everything that you listen to is influenced by the rock and roll era, again, from the 50s to the 90s. So I'm very anxious to kind of cure this, to help uh, help you learn more about the music and more about the times, what was going on when these bands played, and maybe some of their inspiration as well. I'll probably do a video at some point on the 1940s, because there's actually a lot of good stuff out of the 1940s, stuff that I wouldn't have listened to back in the 70s when I was a teenager. But in hindsight, after having seen some of this, some of it on the Reactors videos that I hadn't seen before, but it's stuff that you need to maybe look at some point. But that's not where we're starting. We're starting with the 1960s and 70s. Like I said, basically that time period was what I consider the peak of rock's real creativity and just amazing music, and I think you're going to enjoy it. So if I was to capsulize everything that this video series is about, first of all, I'd say it's about the bands. It's about individual bands. The first couple of videos I do one will be on the 60s and one will be on the 70s. That's very generalized and just kind of giving you an idea of what was going on at that time, and the type of music that was coming out, why, and we'll talk about a few of the bands, but nothing in depth. We'll go into that in the individual videos. We'll talk about their best songs, their best performances, and where to find those. Maybe not exactly the IRLs that you need to click on to watch or listen to if you're, if you're just a listener, but in general, because I'm not wanting to give too much away. That's why, on all the thumbnails it says no spoilers. I'm not going to tell you exactly what the song's about. I'm not going to tell you exactly which one to listen to, but I'll guide you into which ones to avoid, and maybe some kind of some signposts as far which way to go with the bands. Like I said, the best songs performance, whether to listen to them live first or wait and do that after you've heard the studio versions, and I'll give you my reasons for that as well. Also, who were they? What were the members of the bands, and at least the main members? Some bands had a lot of personnel changes through the years, but each band had its core membership that played their most popular songs, and that's who we'll talk about a little bit. And like I said, the times that they were in, their motives for writing what they wrote, and that kind of thing. I think it's important, and we'll go through all that. So one of the first things that I think is important for all of this is consider how people listen to it then. If you're just a listener or even a reactor that wants a genuine experience, you'll probably want to listen to this music, the way that we listened to it when it first came out. In the 60s, if you were growing up in the 60s listening to music, you heard a song for the first time on the radio. It was probably AM radio, and it was not in stereo. Occasionally, if you were a little older and you were buying your own music, you might buy an album, because that's when album rock started to get popular, but it was still basically geared towards singles. Once again, the Beatles were the most popular band then, and possibly still the most popular band ever. But when they released their music, they occasionally did music videos, which was really rare. They had the money, they had the clout to do it, and most of those were not live. They were, they were lip sync, like a lot of music videos were and have been done ever since. But if you just want to see them and see their artsy fartsy music videos, and that's cool, but we didn't hear them that way. That's not the way we first heard their songs. We first heard them on the radio, or if we had a friend that bought an album, then we could go over there and listen to their album. And that to me is one of the big takeaways from this. I would love for music to get more social again. Even when you go to a concert now, everybody's got their phone. They're doing this the whole time, looking at a little 4-inch screen and thinking they're getting an experience. I mean, yeah, they're hearing the music at full fidelity, but they're not really collaborating with the crowd. They're not joining in. Even in the 90s, when people were crowd surfing and mosh pits and all that, I kind of disliked the violence of it all, but, there again, it was still social. It's not social now. You get your music on Spotify, or you stream it on whatever service, and you don't share it with your friends unless you do it through email or social media. And well, whether they listen to it or not, they didn't come over to your house and sit down, smoke a blunt, and just chill with it. That's what we did most of the time. We, if we didn't hear it on the radio first time, we heard it at a friend's house for the first time, and we were being social. There's nothing wrong with that, and I don't see any problem with bringing that back a little bit. So, fight for that. There's certain things that probably should be listened to ahead of live recordings. Again, the Beatles made plenty of music videos. If you want to watch those, it's fine. But just keep in mind, they're lip sync. They're not recorded for the video. They're recorded for the album, and the album was made for the video or the song. And that's the case with a lot of music back then. Even stuff that was on television or was captured for movies, movie short clips or whatever, a lot of it was done with lip sync. Concerts that were recorded, that's different, but they had especially in the 60s, the technology just wasn't there to get really good recordings, at least not until, the exception to that would be Monterey Pop in 67, which you really, really need to watch, if not the whole thing, because it's hours and hours long, but a lot of bands played there that were that did some of their best work at that festival. Woodstock's another one. They made a movie of it. If you want to watch the movie, that's really a good way to get the feel for the whole weekend. It's a couple hours long, but it's not as long as the documentary on Monterey Pop. It's really sad seeing people listen to the wrong thing on their reaction videos. That to my mind, there people in the comments are probably telling them you need to rewatch that in the proper form, and I don't disagree. I'm going to try to help you avoid that, though. Like I said, for instance, Pink Floyd, you want to listen to the album. You just do. Some of their live performances that were recorded much, much later are incredible, but they didn't include all the members. Some of the band members weren't with them at that point. Even though the music is, like I said, it's incredible, it's amazing. But if you were to listen to Comfortably Numb, for example, it's hugely popular for reactors. I've seen people listen to it from the movie, the Wall movie, and I've seen people listen to it from the live concert done in the 2000s. And I don't recommend doing it. I really recommend listening to the entire Wall album. And I know some of you are going to say, oh no, I don't want, I'm just doing single songs. Well, do that. But listen to the whole album, record your reactions to each song, and then, release all the songs as separate videos. Not all of them, because not all of them are really going to be worthy of a video of their own, but you will understand it, you'll laugh, you will cry, and you'll cry some more. It's a sad album. It's a very emotional album. And to pick a song out of the middle of it and just listen to that, you're really not doing it justice, and you're not doing yourself justice. So, like I said, I'm going to try to point you in the right direction on whether to listen to something live or if there's a TV version of it that's better. Some of the shows that do have good videos from that time, from the 60s and 70s, were Midnight Special. That was mostly in the 70s, and did have live performances. A lot of the videos, all the videos are extremely good from that. Somebody requests you to listen to that, do it, unless it's something I said to stay away from until you've heard the album. But Soul Train, some of that was lip sync, some not, but the recordings are out there, and particularly for the funk movements and stuff like that, that's really good stuff there. American Bandstand, some of that was lip sync, some not. But if you just want to see the bands play, or even pretend to play, it's not a bad option as well. Don Kirshner's rock concert. Now that was live recordings. It's during the 70s, and what I've seen on YouTube of that so far is not so much the individual songs as individual concerts. So it's a little longer. Good for a live stream though. Ed Sullivan show. Ed Sullivan was, I always thought he was a boring, kind of goofy looking old guy that had his show. Most of his years were in black and white, although he did transition to color in the late 60s. But he's the guy that introduced Elvis to the United States, to a huge, huge, huge TV audience. It's worth watching that for historical purposes. He also introduced the Beatles to the United States. I mean, this guy might have looked dull, he may have been kind of weird looking to me, but he was introducing two of the most important artists of the rock and roll era to the United States. Had 70 million views for the Beatles on their first appearance there. It's definitely worth watching, but like their concerts, the Beatles had so many fans screaming at the top of their lungs that sometimes you couldn't hear it, and it really took away from the music. But it's an experience. It's a historic thing to look at, and it's definitely worth your time. The Beatles, in fact, stopped touring in '66. They didn't do live shows until they did their final show on the top of a building. I think it was in '69. But yeah, they stopped performing because performing live because they couldn't hear themselves. The crowds were so loud they couldn't hear themselves, so they stopped touring. Maybe if they'd been still a group in the '70s, that may have changed, because obviously Paul McCartney and Wings and John Lennon did do live shows after the Beatles broke up, but technology had caught up, and you could hear the band. You had talkback speakers. You had all kinds of methods for the band to hear themselves. So, that problem had kind of gotten resolved by the '70s. But yeah, a lot of their stuff, from the Beatles stuff, yeah, their live stuff is not what to watch unless you watch that final concert on the top of the Apple. I think it was the Apple Building. MTV didn't come around until 1980. Their first song they played was a video, Killed the Radio Star. I think that's the name of it. And it was very prophetic. Everybody after MTV came out had to have a video. You had to promote your songs with a video. Musicians, bands who would have never put anything out like that were putting out stuff like that. And it kind of put a lot of the older bands, a lot of the hard rock bands, and the bands from the golden age, in my opinion, kind of got edged out, and music started changing in the '80s. So MTV stuff, some of it's good, some of it's just really stupid video. And I come from a video production background, and even I think that some of the videos were just really stupid. And to be honest, I don't think music videos have ever gotten really good. Concert videos have, and concept things like Pink Floyd's The Wall were extraordinary. But yeah, music videos, a lot of them were silly. But even though when you get to ZZ Top, people are going to want you to watch their videos. Their videos were cute, but just don't let it take away from the music. If it were me, I would listen to the music first and then watch the video later. That's just me. So, one more thing before I close. I'll try to point out hidden gems. Hidden gems come up because when you heard album rock, when you bought albums, there were always songs that didn't hit the radio, didn't get popular with your friends, whatever, but were still really good songs. Some of them were odd songs. Some of them were just really masterfully played and were either too long for the radio or just too out there for the radio. And there was a lot of that. So I'll try to point out some of that as I go. In fact, a lot of us found hidden gems because of a service during the '70s, at least, mostly during the '70s, it may have been '60s too, called Columbia House. And Columbia House was a records, or a vinyl warehouse, basically, of vinyl records. They would give offers. You could get like 10 albums for 50 cents or $1 or something if you agreed to buy a certain number, 3 albums in a year or something. So you got all this music almost for free. And because their list of albums was limited, it wasn't the best or the most popular stuff out there. You ended up with a lot of things that you wouldn't have heard, from your friends. You wouldn't have heard from the radio. And you uncover a lot of hidden gems from that, and a lot of stuff that I wouldn't have listened to or even heard of the bands if it weren't for the Columbia House, and I had a stack of 8 tracks and later albums and cassettes that were from Columbia House that I essentially paid, you know, $4 or $5 from. So tune in. Next installment will be on the 1960s. This kind of broad general thing, kind of like this was, but hopefully not this long. I didn't mean to go quite this long. Then there'll be a video on the 70s, because like I said, those are the 2 decades that I think have the most reactable stuff, and what I consider the pinnacle of rock and roll. And then we'll get into the individual bands. Like I said, I think the Beatles are the first ones I'm going to do. The first 4 are going to be the Beatles, Led Zeppelin, Jimi Hendrix, and Rush. From that, we have plenty of other artists. Love for you to join in. We'll try to put out 2 videos a week. Not sure how that's going to do, because I've actually got a job. Unless there's like thousands of you that flock to the channel and start making me enough money, you know, it's probably going to be 1 or 2 a week. But I'll try to keep as many of them flowing as possible, because let's face it, there's a lot of reactors out there and they're missing out. I would like to think that I can do something to help them out with that. So yeah, come back. Let's have some fun with this and let the good times roll.